obviously the international players who've been away, have they all come back fit and well? And the players who are unfit for West Brom, are any of them fit for Monday?
Well, I think the players that played international football all seem to be okay. There's only one that we haven't yet seen, but we believe he's fine. That's Czech Kouyaté. He had a longer journey than the others. And with regard to players who didn't feature in the West Brom game, the only one I think we're likely to recover is Tyreek Mitchell, although we're still assessing James McCarthy and Nathaniel Klein.
Michy Batshuayi's been away with Belgium. He scored for them again. His record for Belgium, Roy, is pretty good now. It's 22 goals in 33 games, but he's been complaining that he's not trusted at Palace the way he is with Belgium. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, I think it's fairly common criticism for players when they go away and play for their national team, although Michy only played 60 minutes, I think, in the 3 games, but they often then, if they're asked by their journalists, what's gone wrong, they praise the national team and criticise the club. It's a fairly common occurrence, but we know what Michy can do. We know that he's a goal scorer. It was good to see him score his goal. It was a very good goal too. So I'm pleased that he's doing well for the national team, and I still believe and hope that he's going to do well for us in the last 9 games of the season when he gets his opportunity to play.
Roy, we've not spoken to you for a couple of weeks. During that time, has there been any discussion with Steve Parish about a new contract for you next season?
No, because I'm not interested in having that discussion at the moment. I'm interested really in working very hard with the players who are here and making certain we finish this season properly. And as a result, it's the games ahead of us that interest me much more than the next season at the moment. And when the time is right, we'll discuss it.
When, Mo, do you think the time will be right? And do you want to stay for another year?
Well, that's again, these are things that I will keep to myself until such time as I feel it's the right moment to make any announcement. Every week I get the same question, every week I give the same answer, and I'm going to continue doing that until such time as I feel there's an announcement to be made.
Sure. I mean, Andros Townsend's been saying, though, on national radio this week that the players are going to have to wait till the end of the season. Is that helpful for you as a manager?
Well, it doesn't seem to be affecting anybody in the training sessions. I've got to say I'm full of admiration for the way everyone is continuing to do their job as I believe they should be trying to do their job. And I'm convinced that they, like myself, are very keen to do a good job in these last 9 games and finish the season as high in the table as we possibly can. So as far as I'm concerned, these matters will get sorted out in due time, and that time will be decided by the club at the final analysis.
And as you say, Roy, there are 9 games left. You're on 37 points. It's hard to see Palace going down from that. Will the team play perhaps with a little less pressure, a bit more expansively now on 37 points?
I think we could possibly play with a bit less pressure because 2 or 3 of the last games have been extremely pressurised games, in particular games against Fulham and West Brom. If you're talking about securing your place in the league, they were really high pressure games. So in that respect, you're quite right to say that there might be slightly less pressure. I don't really understand expansive. I mean, if expansive means are we going to now start rolling the ball out and trying to make 7 or 8 passes in our penalty area, we won't be doing that because that's not the way we play, and we don't have the type of players who would appreciate us trying to ask them to do that. We're going to keep on trying to put a team out and prepare it to win the game, making certain that we've analysed the opponents correctly and that every one of our players, when he goes on the field, knows very much what we expect of him and what we want him to do as a team player to help us come out with a winning result. So we'll definitely be trying to do that, and we'll be aided by the fact that Wilf Zaha and Jeffrey Schlupp, 2 of our major attacking players, if you like, or players that have got the ability to really do things which the opposition don't expect, are now fit and well. And I think that will be very useful for us in the last 9 games.
And just finally from me, Roy, your thoughts on this one. Everton on Monday night, they beat you at Selhurst earlier in the season. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, they're a good team. They're playing well. They've got a lot of good players. They've recruited very well also. So it all boils down, I suppose, as most games do, to how well we can perform. We actually performed well against them in the home game. I mean, remember it well, but we lost to a very controversial penalty, which actually ended up changing the handball interpretation, which I'm happy about, but it didn't do me much good because we didn't get the the points we might have got, or the point we might have got, had we not had to suffer from the handball interpretation that was rife at the time. But we know any time you go up to Everton, you're going to face a very, very difficult game. They are a good team. They're very well managed and coached. The recruitment's been very good. The players they brought in have made them much stronger. So all we can do really is to make certain we prepare the game as best we can and make certain that we believe in ourselves and we have faith that if we play well enough, we can get the result we would like there.
Thanks a lot, Roy. Cheers.
Bye, Jeremy.
Thank you. We'll now go to Rebecca Collins.
Hi, Roy. Lovely to see you. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Rebecca. Very well.
How was your international break? Was it training as usual with the players that you had at the training ground?
Would you say that one more time? Because your voice, unfortunately, with this
Sorry.
echo in here, I'm not hearing that well. I heard about players at the training ground, but I didn't understand the question.
How was your international break? Was it training as usual at the training ground?
Yes, it was training as usual. We missed a fair number, of course, but it gives you a bit more opportunity to work with the players who are left behind, some of whom aren't necessarily playing every week. So it's good to have that opportunity. And it also is a good opportunity to work with some of the younger players in the under-23s that you see play, but you've not had a chance to actually work with to any great degree to incorporate them into the group to get the right numbers to do the training sessions you want to do. And I've been very happy with both of those situations. The chance to work with in a bit more detail with the ones who are left behind, and also the chance to work and see what these under-23s can do when they step up into a somewhat more intensive environment.
There's been a few goals from your international squad over the break as well. How nice has that been to see?
Again, just one thing. Can we stop that guy outside there? Just one. Can I presume you're editing this so you can start again. I've got
Yes, of course.
a guy outside here mowing the grass. So can we tell him to stop? That will be a help. Then I might hear what you're saying.
Okay, no worries.
Just hang on.
I think the sound might have gone now, Roy, as well. Oh.
There we go. I think we just wait for Joanne to come back. I think I might have to get the oxygen tank out here now. She's just done a 50-metre sprint.
Poor Joe.
Sorry about that, Joanne. I mean, I just said we might need the oxygen tank after that 50-metre sprint there. The guy couldn't hear because he's got the guy making the noise. He's got what do you call it? The headphones on. So he's fine. It's just me. Right, Rebecca, let's start the second part of your question again and hope for a bit more luck.
Right, let's go again. Roy, there's been a few goals from your international squad over the break as well. How nice has that been to see?
Yeah, I'm still struggling to hear.
I'll try again.
Yeah.
There's been a few goals from your international squad over the break.
A few goals from my international squad. What do you mean by that?
So we've had Batshuayi score, Benteke, Eze. How nice has that been to see?
Oh, you're always pleased when players that go away with their international team score goals. Eze's was a very important one. Very disappointed that didn't lead to what I thought was going to lead to a victory and keep England in the tournament. And as for Michy and Christian, they waited patiently for a chance to play, albeit against Belarus and a fairly resounding win. But it was nice to see them both getting a chance to play, Michy for 60 minutes and Christian for 30, and they both chipped in with a goal, which is always good for players' confidence. So delighted for them as well. And as for Eze, I'm going to have to try and cheer him up, I think, when he gets back, because he's going to be bitterly disappointed that to have what looked like being a very, very good result, which would qualify them for the quarterfinals, snatched away from them with that long distance strike in the final minutes of the game.
So it's going to be big cuddles from Roy when he's back.
Well, it would be nice to, but I mean, I don't think that managers of my age cuddling players is a great idea at any time, and it's certainly not a particularly good idea in this coronavirus pandemic, because I'm pretty certain I would find my way into the headlines for cuddling a player at a time when I'm supposedly supposedly being required to stay away from everybody. But I'm pleased that I'm vaccinated, so I feel quite comfortable these days.
You've got Everton up next on Monday. How much of a different team do you think it will be from the last time that you played them in September?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it will be a different team. I think that Carlo's working with them and improving them all the time. And, almost a year has gone by since that game, and that's another year's work with Carlo. And as a team, he's also improved the team in that time, brought in players that, I think have strengthened the team even more. So we know that it's going to be a very tough game up there. But unfortunately, most games in the Premier League these days are very tough games. And I don't think I've ever taken a team to Everton and thought, right, this is a game that won't cause us too many problems. And this is a game where I won't be suffering to some extent on the touchline. And I don't think the game on Monday night will give me any respite from that. There'll be plenty of suffering, I'm sure, during the course of the game. But our aim, of course, is to make them suffer too. So I'm rather hoping that the anxiety that I feel on the touchline will be matched by Carlos.
And Roy, you are 12th in the table, but how much do you still find yourself looking at other teams around you and what fixtures are coming up? Is it easy to switch off yet?
Oh, I don't think switching off is ever going to be an option. It would be a massive mistake to switch off. Each game, we only play 38 Premier League games. It's not as if, you're talking hundreds of games. It's 38 in a season. I think you've got to show the respect for each and every one of those 38 games, and you've got to go into it with the same intensity, the same anxiety, if that's the right word, the same focus as you had when you started the season in the first game. There can never be a question of, well, we're safe now, we can relax and take it easy. That's never an option, and certainly we can't do that, because 37 points, it's a good total after 29 games, and we're quite proud of that total, but it's still nowhere near enough to make certain that we could really say we're safe and we can relax. And if we do get to that point total, where maybe I could say, yeah, we're pretty safe now, we don't have to worry about relegation, I still wouldn't be expecting players to relax. I'll still be expecting them to go out and do their very best in the next Premier League game, because they should be aware that every Premier League game they notch up on their belt is something worth having.
And Roy, last one from me. What do you see as a good position for Crystal Palace to finish this season?
Well, a good position would have been number one, but that's not really going to happen, and it's never realistic. The realistic positions for us are somewhere between 14 and 10, I suppose. So I'm hoping we'll achieve that. But there's still a lot of work to do if we're going to do it. And a lot depends upon runs. This year, funnily enough, we've been further away from the relegation zone than we've probably been in the previous seasons. And yet, having said that, that can all change in the last games, because in those previous seasons, we've often had a run of games right at the end that have lifted us from 17 or 16 to 11 or 12. So it can all happen. We're aware of that. It's going to be tough, because we've got several games, and two of our games have been moved. So we're going to have those fixtures again. We have to play 3 games in a week, and that isn't our best suit, but we'll have to deal with that. So we get as many points as we can, and as long as it's away from the relegation teams, I'm happy.
Roy, good luck for Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Roy.
Alex.
Just to follow on from Rebecca, there will be 3 weeks between your last game and Everton on Monday. Has it given you a chance to reflect on the season so far as a whole?
Well, I suppose it would have done if I'd have chosen to do so, but I haven't chosen to use the time reflecting on the season. I've chosen really to use the time to continue doing the daily job, which is coming in and working with the players and trying to make certain that the training sessions are fit for purpose and are suited to everybody, and that we are taking the steps which we always like to try and take to prepare the team for the games ahead. So that's where my focus has been. I haven't actually spent it reflecting on the season. I'm not unhappy with 37 points through 29 games. I am hoping that we'll keep players fit in these last 9 games, because that was a massive problem for us in the start-up period at the end of last season, where there was a lot of games to be played. I'm hoping that the squad will be strong enough and will remain, if you like, intact enough for us to deal with those games as best we can. And we'll keep cracking on to try and get as many points as we can and finish as high up the table as we can.
Connor Wickham's got some game time in international break for the under 23 side and scored. Is it good to see him get some regular minutes, and is he an option to come back into the squad?
Well, he was in the squad the last time we played, I seem to remember. I mean, you're testing my memories out here, what the actual 20-man squad against West Brom was, but I have a fairly sort of strong suspicion that he was one of the 20. So it's not a question of him being in the squad, but of course, to get into the team, he's got to really prove his fitness and keep working hard. He knows that, and he also knows, strange enough, that in the actual centre forward position, we do have serious options, because there are areas now through injury where we find ourselves stretched. But one area where, luckily, we don't feel stretched at the moment is in the forward position. So, in that respect, Connor's task is that little bit harder. But it's good to see him play a couple of under 23 games, get those minutes under his belt, and even nicer to see that he scored 2 goals for the under 23s in a win.
And if I could just ask you about the comments A.D. Boothroyd made as a former England manager. He was saying that the England under 21 job is the utterly impossible job because they lose their best players to the senior squad. Do you have some sympathy with him in that?
Yes, I do. I suppose if you're the under 21 manager, I suppose you would like to be in a situation where any player who can represent England who's under 21 is one that you would like to use. And I remember those arguments even going back to the Finland and the Switzerland days. It's nothing new. It's all a question really of perception. It's quite strange with the under 21s. You know, they play their qualifying games pretty much under the radar. You know, no one actually starts jumping around rejoicing about a victory or lamenting a defeat. But then the tournaments come around, then suddenly it starts to become interesting. And it's not always so easy for the coach at that time. So, of course, I have sympathy for him. Unfortunately, you can't say jobs are impossible, because no job actually is impossible. But I think what he's trying to say is the expectations perhaps are not always as realistic as they perhaps should be. But that's, again, nothing new. And I think whenever you take a job as an English national coach at any level, from schoolboy level right the way through to the first team, you have to accept sometimes that the scrutiny and the expectations won't always be as fair and just as you would like them to be.
Thanks, Roy.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Alex. Go to Ian Abraham to talk sports.
Hi, Roy. How are you?
I'm fine here, thank you. I could have done with your booming voice on the training ground this morning, but there you go. I'll have to get back to my whispering one.
I didn't realise I had a booming voice, but there we go. If I just pick up one thing about the under-21s, and obviously every Chiesa scored against Croatia, so you are delighted with that. But wouldn't it be better if the under-21s were allowed to have their best players and win a tournament and take a winning mentality into the senior tournament? Because when I spoke to AD this week, he was talking about if the senior team win, in a way, his job is kind of done as well. But the senior team haven't won anything since '66.
It's a very, very difficult question. It was a big debate during my time as national team manager. You know, I'm far from convinced that having teams that win at junior level means you'll have a team that wins at senior level, unless, of course, all the players continue to come through. Now, that isn't the case. That is quite often not the case, because the very best ones will always jump over the under-21s, always. You know, the Fodens of the world, the Sterlings of the world, the Rashford was played in. You know, during my time, I could name off the top of my head 5 or 6 players who went straight into the first team squad, having hardly played an under-21 game. So unless you really believe that you can map out progress for players, to say, well, at 16, 17, we get this group together, we're going to make them into a winning team, they're going to go to under 19, under 21. And then I'm not so certain you can always do that, really. I think there's always going to be a situation where there's a lot of fluctuation. And then, of course, the next big question is, well, what do we see in terms of under 21 football? Do we want to win under 21 tournaments, or do we want to win senior tournaments? Now, you'll answer both, but if some compromise has got to be made, and you think that to win our senior matches and qualify for tournaments, we need some of these under 21 players to make us good enough, then I think most people would agree, well, that's the priority, that's where they should play. And as a result, you impoverish the under 21s, but surely they might be doing their job, because the games that people like Foden and Mason Mount and these guys, Grealish, all the ones who've actually now come forward and are playing regularly in the first team, Reece James, you've got Jadon Sancho, the list goes on and on. You could say we're succeeding with the under 21s because the work we're doing with them is preparing them to go and play for the senior team. And if there's some coordination between the way the two teams play, that has got to be advantageous. And then you go back to the argument, well, you've got, you develop winning habits. Well, I think the players that we're talking about at this level, they're getting that every week in their club teams. The development of a winning mentality and a winning habit, I think all the teams in the Premier League where these players come from are trying to develop that. So it's not as if no one's working on their desire or thought process when it comes to winning. So maybe there's got to be a continued debate as, well, what do we really want from the under 21s? And if the answer is, well, we're fed up, not actually winning the tournaments we take part in, then I think that the FA will have to make a decision and say, well, in future, to win these tournaments, we have got to give the coach at the time the very best players. And we can't keep robbing him of some of the guys that have helped him get to the tournament by putting him in the first team. So he can have them and we will get on without them. But I'm afraid if I was the England national team manager, I would be saying, no, I want the best players in my team, and your team is there to provide the best players for us.
Like you would do at Palace, if there was a cracking youngster coming through, well, they have been during your time at Palace, you'd want them in the first team rather than just playing week after week in the under 23 tournaments.
Sure, but luckily, not many people outside of myself and avid Crystal Palace fans know the result of under 23 matches. So it's not quite the same scrutiny as when an England team goes and plays in a tournament.
You said earlier you couldn't relax because you still don't think you're safe. I think 37 points is pretty much there. But that's only my opinion. Yours counts more. When you are safe, will you be able to relax? Will you be able to map out your future more? Because we're all waiting, with bated breath.
Well, I can map out my future any time, but the point is, while I'm in this job here, which is a very, very important one, and there are many, many important games to play, I much prefer to concentrate on using all my energy and focus on that rather than map out what I would want to do, because there's still plenty of time for that in the future.
Final question I was going to ask you is about Jose Mourinho, if I may. He's approaching 1,000 games. Now, you've sailed well past that figure. First of all, in terms of football management, how difficult is it to remain relevant, to remain good at your job, good enough at your job, to manage for 1,000 matches in the top flight?
Yeah, his 1,000 matches are far, far more worthy than mine, because a lot of my matches really have been played in leagues nowhere near as difficult as the Premier League. And really, every game that he's had, I would think of those 1,000, or he might knock off one or two for the early days with, Portuguese teams which weren't at the top of the league. They've really been, at the very, very highest level. So I think what he's done to get to 1,000 games is quite incredible. I'm lucky to have the longevity, which I'm happy about, and really enjoyed the amount of time that I've had. But I wouldn't for 1 minute put the games that I've had at that sort of number in relation to the games that he's had, because 1,000 games at the level that he's worked at is quite incredible. how long can he keep going with it? Well, he can keep going as long as he likes, really, because he's fit, he's still relatively young, and he doesn't seem to have lost any of that energy or qualities that made him such a very, very good coach all those years ago when we saw him running up and down the touchline at Old Trafford after achieving an incredible result. But the big question, I think, for all of these managers is going to be, how long are you prepared to swim around the goldfish bowl? How long are you prepared to put up with the pressures and, you know, the slings and arrows that come your way? If you're prepared to do it, then I'm pretty certain that he could be working long past my years. Unfortunately, I probably won't be around to see it because I don't know, I've got another 25 years left.
You mentioned that goldfish bowl. I mean, you've been in that goldfish bowl. Do you think it's been more intense for someone like Jose than for someone like you? Or do you think because of your career and the way it's taken you, you've had that?
Yeah, I've had, I mean, the fact is I've had plenty of spells as well, you know, so I know what it feels like. And, you know, a fairly decent number of my 45 years have been spent in pretty murky goldfish bowls. I was just fortunate, perhaps, that the start I got was in a league or in a country where the goldfish bowl was actually full of very fresh water, and there weren't many big goldfish in it alongside me.
You think you still got the hunger to go on, like you just said, and go past your honour review? You still think he's got the hunger to carry on and win trophies?
I'm probably pretty sure he has. I mean, I've got enormous respect and admiration for him, but that's only one person can answer that question. That's Jose himself, and I just wish him well with whatever he decides to do in the next years of his career. But the one thing's for sure, he'll still be the man he was, the coach he was, the manager he was, that he was when he first burst onto the scene.
Brilliant, Roy. Great to see you again. Keep well.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. The last question from this section is from Jack Russell.
Afternoon, Roy.
Hello, Jack. Where are you?
I'm good.
See you.
I just wanted to go back to England very quickly, but the seniors. Gareth Southgate has said that picking a 23-man squad is a rather unique skill and something that should be rewarded over the decisions you take. Is that something you agree with? And did you have sort of late nights agonising over squads as England manager? And how much do you need to stick to your principles when you're doing that and shut out all the clamour for a million number 10s to be in the squad?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, to answer the first part, you do have lots of times when you don't feel comfortable because you're having to make decisions which you're going to have to relay to people, and sometimes has to be relayed to players who've actually done a pretty good job for you during the qualification campaign. So that's never an easy task. I think to some extent, blocking out the clamour can be a little bit easier, because the fact is principles and what you want and how you want your team to play, and how you want this squad to be when you go away with them for 5 to 6 weeks in an important tournament. I think you're so aware of that, and I'm so sure Gareth is, that it's not so much the clamour to include someone that hasn't really been that much part of your thinking. It's more a question of how you're going to balance the number of players and in their positions, and to what extent you're going to be able to take players with you who will be very good teammates, very good colleagues, very good travellers, if you like, and will be very useful because they will balance parts of the team where maybe you don't have as many to balance it with. And I think that's a very, very big decision. I remember being told by a friend of mine who worked with England, Mike Kelly, when trying to put together the first Switzerland squad. And I didn't follow his advice, which was a big mistake, but I've tried to do it since. And he said to me, look, you're taking 23 players and we're Switzerland. If we get 4 games, it'll be a miracle. 7 games to get to the final, forget it. We're Switzerland. We shouldn't even be here, really. We've broken all records and defeated all the odds to get here. So you've got 23 guys, all of whom are desperate to go. They'll be as excited as, you know, the 4-year-old kid on Christmas morning. So what you've got to work out is that probably you know what your team is. You know what the team that's got you here is, those 11 or 12, or in England's case, it might be as many as 15, 16. But for us in Switzerland, it was 13 or 14 players. You know, they're the ones that we'd used, and they're the ones that we were planning to use in these 4 games. So that leaves an awful lot of guys over who aren't going to get a game. They're going to train every day. They're going to go out there. They've got to train well because you want to get the best preparation for the starting 11. But they've got to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, they've got the nod. Yes, they've got the kudos of being selected in an international squad, but they don't play. And when players don't play, you know, they get questions from the journalists, and often they don't answer in a team-friendly way. They answer in a way which I can't understand how I'm not playing because I'm so good. So I think balancing things out in that respect. And he said to me, what you need to do is you need to choose 16, or I think he said about, let's leave the goalkeepers out of it, with 3 goalkeepers, so 20 players, 20 outfield players. He said, you've got to choose 16, maybe 17 that you really think. And then the other 3, as long as they're good enough, can be people who are in there because, you know, you think they're the right types, you think they're going to be useful for the group as a whole, you think they're going to bring something to the squad, even though they're not playing. Now they're rare, they're rare birds, those ones, you know, a player who is prepared to make that degree of self-sacrifice at international level. So I've tried to work on that sort of basis, but I haven't always done it as well as I should have done. And certainly in Switzerland, I left 2 guys out then that haunt me to this day, that I didn't take them with me, and I took 2 other people on the basis of, well, if this one gets injured, this one probably is the best second alternative. Of course, none of those 3 that I chose, or none of those 2 that I chose in place of the 2 I should have done played, didn't kick a ball. And I regret to this day that I didn't take the 2 that, for me, deserved it a lot more for what they'd done for me during the qualifications, and B, what they would have brought to the squad by their human qualities.
Can you give us a couple of names, or are you going to keep that under your hat?
Well, one was a guy called Chris Bonvin, and the other decision that I was wrong not to make was playing Andy Egley, who did travel with us but didn't play, and then we were qualified, so we had a 3rd game, and instead of putting him in as one of the centre backs and giving one of the other centre backs a rest, I continued to leave him on the bench, and the other player was Beat Sutter.
And just finally, I suppose that task of picking 2 or 3 that are there to bring a correct attitude is more difficult with England when you're having to leave out even bigger name players and well, I sort of all that controversy around it.
I know quite a few of the players in the England squad at the moment, so I could sort of vouch for them or talk about them. But there's a good 10 now that I don't know particularly well. But Gareth and Steve Holland will know them extremely well, so they won't have any difficulty making the type of decision I'm talking about, should they decide that that's the way they want to go. But certainly the choice is much, much bigger with an England team than it would have been with a Swiss team, and that's increased exponentially over the years as well. So if you from 2012 when I was appointed first time to today, I think in that period of time a lot more players have come on the scene and makes that decision of Gareth that little bit harder. And he knows that I wish him well with it, and I'm sure he'll do a good job picking the right squad because that's what he's been doing so far.
Thanks very much, Roy. Good luck on Monday.
Thank you very much.